All right. Thank you all for showing up. I know that there'll probably be more students coming in and out as we move through here. My name is Dr. Nicholas Hudson, and I serve as the director of the Office of Student Orientation, Leadership, and Engagement. And it is on behalf of the TAMU Greek Council, as well as the Office of Student Orientation, Leadership, and Engagement. We are pleased to bring you an event today, which is a little bit different than we normally do. Today, we're going to have a conversation and a panelist around resources related to Latino sexual health as part of National Coming Out Day. There is also going to be available free HIV testing available to folks down in the student health services, which is a wonderful way. But this is part of the Social Change Leadership Series. Every month we have a kind of cultural heritage or cultural discussion. And then another topic each month is related to a social challenge facing the larger Laredo, Texas community. And so this one falls into our LGBT cultural heritage conversations, as well as fits into that secondary box around the social challenges facing folks. So what we're going to do today, we are very thankful to have our friends from the, so we over here to start off over on y'all's right, y'all's left, I don't remember. As far as over here, we have Eduardo Reyes, who is the lead patient navigator for PILAR, which is a nonprofit located right off of McPherson, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have Erica Martinez, who is a health educator with the Laredo City Health Department. So we're just gonna start off with some prepared questions that came from Greek Council to start us off here. So today being around sexual health, Latino sexual health, we're going to try to talk a little bit about some of the taboos that exist inside of the Latino community, but also pay a little bit of attention on gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, sexual health as well. So our first question, if we wouldn't mind also speaking up, so this is going to go to both of you, the recording, the microphone's all the way over here. So it's the way our system's set up here. Our first question is, how does culture play a role in Latino sexual education from a parent's perspective? So with your experience and our family members really being the driving force of teaching us or not teaching us sexual health and sexual education, how does culture play a role in that, specifically here in Laredo? So either one of you, if you have questions or answers, excuse me, would like to start off that first question.
As mentioned, my name is Erica Martinez Dominguez. I'm with the health department, and I've been involved with HIV and sexual health for over 20 years. So I have seen the transition of our culture be impacted by this epidemic. One of the things that I have seen, even as a parent, we still see a huge struggle in getting the conversation going about sexual health. You know, we still hear parents talking in little codes, and when they talk to their family members, even as family members are, or their children are already adults, we still have parents trying to call in for an STI appointment for their child who's already 20, 21, or even older. You know, so that goes to show that culture is a huge impact in how we perceive health in itself, and even more so in sexual health. So at least in these 20 some plus years of me working in the field, I have seen a slight change in the conversation. And even as a parent myself, with a senior in high school who has told me many stories of her classmates and things like that, we still see a lot of challenges, at least in this perspective in the work that I do, that parents are not having the conversation in reference to sexual health. You know, and then that even more so holds back when it comes in reference to the LGBTQIA+ community. So we're not talking about sex, how much more likely are we to talk about the issues that come with sex that also relate to the LGBTQIA community. So yes, it's still a big challenge for us here in this area, where religion is a huge driver of our culture, and that type of faith can hold back individuals from wanting to see more information, at least what we've seen across our paths at the health department.
Great.
Would it be okay if I stood with my story?
Absolutely, you do you.
Alrighty, everybody. Y'all know my name, Eduardo Reyes. Feel free to call me Eddie for the sake of this because I don't want to wait too long. Alrighty, so in our culture, how many of y'all are from Laredo? We can get our hand. Alright, so a bunch of y'all. So I might say a few things right now that might resonate with you all. Growing up, for me personally, I unfortunately don't have the experience Erica does. I've only been in this field for 3 years so far. So although I do have some information to share with y'all, most of what I'll be saying is personal anecdotes from me growing up in this town and how I had to experience the issues that come from our culture and how sex ed is conducted. Now, when I was a little kid, first going through puberty, y'all know how it goes. Y'all looking up stuff online, you're really curious, and God forbid your parents find out because they attack immediately. And a lot of the time it's for fear, because usually by that point you're going through puberty, roughly from 10 to 13, 14. It's the first time exhibiting these kind of behaviors, and for your parents, that's scary. And in conjunction with the culture we have around us, there are many issues that come around. I can only speak from a male perspective where we're kind of taught in a really macho, machista way that you need to go out there and spread your seed. That was something I heard a lot, especially from the men in my family, where they go around telling you, yeah, go and have as much sex as you can because you're a man and that's your right. That was incorrect. I'm so glad I learned that once I was an adult, because man, that was a really bad mentality to have. And what I've learned from the female perspective, y'all are taught to keep yourselves in. Y'all have a flower that must be untouched. Well, we're not plants, we're human. So naturally, as these urges come up, if only if you want to experience these things as a teenager and as an adult too, we're gonna go out and do it. So hopefully the conversations like this one that we're having will be able to expand it a little further and open the minds of individuals who, unfortunately, up until now, see sex still as this taboo thing that shouldn't be discussed because it's us. That's just not true. So hopefully, as we progress with our society, much with the work that Erica has done, I gotta give her a round of applause. I mean, for goodness sake, 20 years to go up there and do what they can to keep themselves safe. That's always a good thing, right? And as a society, we need to do better by our people, everybody, to make sure that this information gets out there.
Great. Thank you, Eddie. And I think you bring up some important parts, right? Like, so as a Latino myself, but didn't grow up here, I lived in a very, and this is a long time ago, lived in a very sex positive community compared to where y'all live here. Like, sex was a very common conversation with my peers, with adults. I think perhaps it was because I didn't live in a majority religion location, but I think you all as youth, as you like to say, have now easy availability on Netflix. Like, there's shows like Sex Education. Who's actually seen Sex Education on Netflix? It is a British show. It is 4 seasons. It's very popular. One of their top shows that they've had that educates teenagers by having a sex psychologist on campus in a high school. And they talk about different levels of sex there. But so we see differences in availability. And I guess part of it is from a medical or even a health prevention perspective, how does this impact us overall, right? And I think that's kind of, how is it different? How is the education that our students are receiving both here in the state of Texas under the curricular focus, right, versus other states, or even just a local Laredo focus? How is it differing from the average sexual education that exists in the rest of the United States and or in different communities? Maybe not Hispanic, Latino communities, but maybe in predominantly white spaces. Let's look at that.
One of the things that I've come across, at least when it comes to public school, the best sexual education curriculum happened in what was called a PEP program. PEP program. I know that many of you had those on your high school campuses. It was for students who were pregnant, and so they could continue their education. They would go to this PEP program, and there they had this whole course for human sexuality. And they explained everything that was in reference to human sexuality and all these other things that happened during sex. Sadly, it was done after the fact. Unfortunately, from other things that happened here in the state of Texas, there's so many Texas codes that it's very difficult for educators like ourselves to provide that education. We can talk about condoms, but we can't just display them in a certain way that it will identify a certain lifestyle based on those codes. So in the state of Texas for public health, public schools, there really isn't a sex education course that is beneficial for everybody. And every school district has that opportunity to hire someone to come in and do a class. But of course, they need consent from the parents for that student to participate. And sadly, a lot of those parents do not allow their child to participate in these classes because they feel if they learn about human sexuality, it's giving them the permission to have sex. When in reality, statistics have shown when there's a good curriculum on sex education, the likelihood of a student having unprotected sex reduces tremendously, and the age increases by the time that they will start to have sex. Because they're more conscientious of knowing of what's out there and knowing why sometimes parents say no, but they can see for themselves what type of decisions to make in reference to their sexual health. So here in the state of Texas, we're in that gray area when it comes to education. It's like, yes, you can, but you can't say everything. And if you are going to, you have to go to outsources like PILAR or the health department to receive that information. So teachers and counselors who I come across, they'll just tell us, hey, give me your business card. I'm going to pass it on and have them reach you. I can't tell them that this is what you're going to tell them, but I can tell them, you know where you can go? Go to PILAR, go to the health department. So that way those students can get that access and stuff. So in reality, at least in my perspective or seeing from, I think it's, like I said, I have a high school student, she's a senior. She has yet to receive that. And in the permission slip that she did get was in middle school. And from her whole class, there was maybe like 10 students from 100 and some who could have attended. So yeah, sexual health education is not.
Wow, that's shocking to me. I got a first grader, so I'm like, oh man, these are things that as a parent, you don't necessarily think about the educational system and the lack of really education around important topics, right?
There's a really good article that I provided for you from the UT Health Public School of Public Health that they assess all these Texas codes. And you really look at it and you're just like, okay, this doesn't make sense. You know, you're telling me I can't talk about condoms, but I can't tell you why they're useful. You know, I can't display how they're to be used. And unless if it's for what the definition of normal is under the Texas code. So yeah, check it out. It's accessible there through the UT Health. It's a really cool essay that explains the Texas code. So that way you can kind of see firsthand of how important it is as well to participate in the politics of it all, because the politics does play a huge factor in how we are able to do our jobs, you know, and the grants that we receive to be able to provide that information as well.
Interesting. Ready?
When I was in elementary school, I got that slip, gave it over to my parents, and first they were shocked. But my mom was a bit younger, so she was like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do it because I don't want to be that man. She didn't turn up later, but you know, that's her. So they pack all the boys into a room, into the gym, and they put on a video with very vague diagrams talking about you're gonna get hair there. Oh, this is gonna start to grow. And of course, you got a room full of 8-year-old boys. What do you think they're gonna be doing? Look, it's a penis. Yeah, that's all it was. And frankly, at that age, yeah, we're a little too young to fully comprehend the full scope of our body because we haven't grown into it yet. And even then, it makes sense to start teaching them slowly about it. The education, that small nugget that I got when I was in elementary school, should continue expanding. Because I can tell you for sure, I had a lot of questions growing up. And all the adults around had the notion of, well, you shouldn't ask that. You're a kid, you should know these things. But what's a kid if not curious? So naturally, I found myself on the computer and I looked at all the answers that pornography had to give. And I can imagine everyone in the room hopefully can agree that that is not a good source of education. Without the resources, without the proper codes to be able to teach students properly, there is no way that we'll be going into any situation involving sex prepared. A lot of people don't see sex as this big thing, but it really is. You're giving your vulnerability, you're being vulnerable to somebody else. That's why things like education, consent, general knowledge over the subject is very important. And Erica's right. Unfortunately, right now, Texas lawmakers just don't see the necessity in doing that because, oh, well, they're kids. We don't want them having sex. Break it to you. Kids, the kids, if they want to have sex, will have sex. If I may, for a moment, I actually have a personal anecdote from a client we saw recently, and I'll go ahead and rescind any identifying information. If they were in a situation where they were in a house party, this person was a minor, an adult, came up to them and told them, never been with anybody else before, but try it. And in that social environment, there is this pressure. I'm sure we've all felt that pressure at some point, whether someone's passing you a beer bottle or a joint, whatever it might be. Pressures can exist even in that environment as well. Fortunately, for this client, they came back positive, civil. Think about that. We have a minor who previously to this situation had never had any sexual contact with anyone else. And here we have an adult taking advantage of the situation. If anything else, children need to be protected with knowledge, because without knowledge, how will they know what to say if something, God forbid, ever happens to them? Well, what if they start to have questions too? We need to get these answered for them so that they don't go to the wrong sources. They can know what to do in that situation and not give into that kind of peer pressure. Because unfortunately, now that person has to live with syphilis for the rest of their lives. And all because they weren't given the proper education.
I think that, Eddie, you bring up some interesting kind of anecdotes there around children and really this kind of, I would say, ostrich kind of approach as it relates to sexual health. We're just not we're gonna bury our heads in the sand and really hope that nothing happens. And yet what I've also noticed here in especially this South Texas area, fully know if this is elsewhere, but this kind of, at the same time, this finding other individuals to be risky, right? There's a belief around young girls and even young boys, stay away from your uncle or stay away from these older gentlemen because you don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes it's family members, things of that nature, but we're not teaching them. So we're teaching them to stay away from people, but not why we need to stay away from them. And also we're not calling out necessarily their predatory actions that sometimes take place in there. So I want to shift, maybe that's kind of an aside from sexual health, but it is though, right? It is part of it, right? Because we then associate as children, sex being bad, sex being something that shouldn't be talked about, and we don't fully know why we need to be protected, using condoms in appropriate ways, or maybe then causing sexual trauma later on, which then creates longer term inability to engage with sexual partner. There's a lot of long-term sexual health and mental health challenges occurring from physical and sexual child abuse that does happen at it. So how is that combated? Like how or what can students do, or what can we as a community do to kind of some ways combat that, like, gotta be careful, can't do this, need to be careful of the people that you're around as you're going through that. I don't know if that really even makes sense as a question, but it brought up a story that's like, they're taken advantage of, but they're not taught how to be proactive, right? So, yeah, so I'm curious as thoughts as it relates to that, yeah.
Vote. That's the big one right now. But besides that, I'm sure y'all already know, you can have these conversations too. I'm sure we all got friends over here or over there who enjoy sex. We're not here to criticize the enjoyment of sex. There is nothing wrong with enjoying sex. At the end of the day, what Erica and I are trying to do is just to make sure that you all enjoy yourself safely. We teach people not to drive drunk. Of course, we also need to teach people to use condoms.
When it comes to sexual health and going back to kind of like what you mentioned, just having the conversation. Because again, yes, I started as a street outreach worker in the late 90s, where everything was no, you have to do this, and this is how you have to do it, because if not, you're gonna get AIDS, you know, type of language, to now where we're discussing and having these conversations where it is a bit more sex positive, you know, and if we have it as your second language, it becomes easier to have those conversations. Like for me, vagina, penis, you know, all these things are literally my second language as my English and my Spanish. So to me, it's not a big issue. Like for example, my daughter, I use her a lot because she's my mini-me. She grew up in the health department. So she knew about these things that I was a story I was telling Eddie earlier. She was my advocate when she was in middle school. She heard friends talking about things like this in reference to sex or even to sexual assault. And she could tell them, you need to go see my mom. And her friends, of course, like, what the hell am I going to go see your mom for? And she's like, well, there's such thing as chlamydia, gonorrhea, you know, and other things that can be happening to you, you know, so you need to go to this place and get that information. So even starting the conversation and not, especially as a parent, because I didn't want to be my mom, because my mom was like, tu florecita, protégelo, you know, and don't do this and don't do that. So my daughter, I started from the very beginning. This is your vagina. This is your buttocks. This is, you know, explaining everything to her. That I even had an embarrassing moment at the hospital for blood work. She had to do a urine test. So I had to hold her. She was a first grade. I had to hold the cup, and she's like, Mom, I can't pee if your head's too close to my vagina. So everybody on the side heard. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, you actually have your daughter cup? Yes. Because I want her to come and tell me, God forbid something happens, you know, that so-and-so touched me here, or this happened there. So I knew it was important, you know, because unfortunately in our community, sexual assault, you know, even within family members, the victim still gets victimized. You know, and the family member that did it still is invited to the parties, is still invited to come to the home and re-victimizes the victim again. So another component that's in reference to what we do in the health department, where the language has changed, the education has changed in the work that we do. Like I said, in the 90s, it was like, you have to do it this way, and this is how you have to do it. Now to, what is it that you are into? Because sex is a huge spectrum. You know what I mean? Gender is one thing and sexual activity is another. So our language has changed in how we approach people and how we talk about it, because what might be somebody else's yuck might be somebody else's yuck. So I always tell my coworkers, don't yuck on somebody else's yuck, because the same thing is going to happen. You know, people are going to respond to your thing, you know, because again, our culture is very big about minimizing things, especially when they're this big. You know, and when we talk about sexual health, we also have to talk about mental health, which now is a big topic, which we never talked about before, especially in our culture and stuff. And it's, oh, that's the pasa, you know, like that was the thing when people were depressed or had anxiety, you know, but now we're having those conversations. So when you continue to have these conversations, and hopefully the day that you become a parent, continue with this thought process. You know, and stuff, because it does make a huge impact in how people perceive sexual health. Because it's no longer the, ooh, dirty, like it said, que sucio, or what. It's, once we changed our clinic from STD clinic to a sexual health clinic, we've been getting more patients coming in for wellness checks. Because a lot of times people are like, It's just I have to have an STD in order to come here. Oh, no, you don't. It's like, once we change the language, people start to realize, you know what, I fall into this category, I could be at risk for an infection. And that's the thing that also has changed in reference to the way we talk about STDs and HIV, because everybody is, even to this day, sadly, I still get a lot of individuals that say, oh, I don't need an HIV test, I'm not gay. Quickly assume that because of what they saw in movies from the 80s and the 90s, and it's only impacting individuals within the LGBTQIA community. It's not. I always tell them HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus. If you are human, you are at risk, and stuff. So language and conversations play a huge role in how we can get that moving. So the more that you can add to that little leña, that fire going, it can increase and then add to that heat and intensity of the necessity of what we need in this community. And I didn't even just being here, something like this.
Yeah.
I got a fun little statistic for y'all, actually. As of late, the HIV rate has been increasing among heterosexuals faster than those in the LGBTQ plus community. So for y'all that are straight, y'all gotta watch out too.
Yeah. I think that's actually to get us to a perfect point. I think there's much more, which I wanted to kind of shift us a little bit more sexual health, but also sexual orientation, right? Today is National Coming Out Day. We've noticed with Generation Z, so their generation, or almost all of y'all's generation in here, where you all are much more fluid. You're either gender fluid or fluid as it relates to sexual orientation, or just more accepting of individuals rather than maybe millennials, that's me, Gen Xers that are others, and maybe your parents that are boomers, right? And I think whether it's social media, like TikTok or Reels, or it is through Netflix or Hulu or whatever show that you find a lot more of the education around these issues. So have you noticed, I know you've only been here for 3 years, but you've been here for 20, have we noticed a shift as it relates to sexual health, sexual conversations for the last, let's say, 5-6 years? And then how is that translated into the work that you've done and are doing?
That's one of the reasons why I stayed in this field for so long, because there is burnout in our field. Because that's the thing that I do appreciate about the Department of State Health Services is they're always up to date on what is happening in our community. So we're constantly being trained on what is gender identity, what is sexual orientation, and how these are two separate components. They're not the same, and how people need to see that it's not together, like this plays a different role. So we're constantly learning and growing in our field to be able to address those issues, because like you said, every generation is very different and the mindset is very different. And from when I started in the 90s working in HIV to now, I feel this huge light and this big hope that I literally feel that HIV will be cured in my lifetime, because we made such huge strides in reference to HIV. And not only that, the education that comes with sexual health, because we are looking at the individual themselves and providing them now their own health option, because condoms does not work for everybody. Monogamy does not work for everybody, because their identity is very different. So that's why people come to us. We always try to make it a safe space so they can express what is sexual to you. Because what might be sexual to me will be totally extreme for somebody else, because now we have from asexual to pansexual, bisexual to, hemosexual, a whole spectrum, and everybody has sex different. So we have to adapt our education of what is the science to what is happening in social behavior. And so that's why I'm very passionate about this field, because we've come to a whole new era of being able to provide services in a different light and tailor to what it is for you, not because of what CDC says. Yes, CDC says this, but now we have all these different health options that are going to be benefiting for you to your lived experience, because everybody's lived experience is very, very different. And everybody's needs are very, very different. So as health educators at the health department, we have to go through this rigorous training, continue education training, to be able to maintain those health status for individuals and keep them at a healthy status. May they be HIV positive or HIV negative. We're getting to a point where we're calling it now a neutral status. That no matter if you have an infection or not, there's going to be some type of pharmaceutical care available for you to be able to keep you healthy. You know, if a person's living with HIV, they can get to a point of undetectable where they're untransmittable. And if a person's HIV negative and they want to stay negative, they can take PrEP or medications now to prevent that from happening. So that's why I really believe in my instincts that these changes is really going to help and impact if we continue the conversation and continuous learning and realizing these are not the things that happened 10 years ago. We're in a whole different ballgame. And those things need to be adapted. Just as important, physical health, mental health, sexual health has to be in those top 10.
Yeah, and I'm going to get right to you, Eddie, but I think you just said something that's super key that I don't know if everybody picked up on. Number one, there's a spectrum of HIV positivity and or negative, right? So if you are positive, you can get to if you're HIV positive, you can get to a point where your count is so low that it's undetectable. So rather than in the films that we had in the 1980s and 90s, like Philadelphia, with Tom Hanks and Antonio Banderas, where it shows a gay man dying from HIV/AIDS, now you can live long, healthy lives, right? And HIV, as Eddie said, is now increasing in heterosexual individuals, but there's ways to counteract that if more people took PrEP, right? So PrEP, I think, sometimes get a negative, or not negative, but maybe a taboo.
It's giving you permission to have sex with everybody.
It is, I think, in many ways. So when people get on PrEP, it could be for, it could be for gay sex, or it could be for straight sex, it could be for any type of sex that it's in. It's just reducing the likelihood of you getting HIV, contracting HIV. So I just wanted to point that out because I don't think that's actually something that's common knowledge that much, that it is totally not curable, but it is manageable in folks that end up contracting HIV, which is a very large challenge with people of color that in general, because of the taboo conversations around sexual health, people of color tend to have contracted HIV at higher levels than those that are predominantly white, right? And so if I'm not mistaken, you all are the health experts, I am not.
Correct. And another thing too, the reason why Katie brought up too, is that the LGBTQIA community were the ones that spearheaded this mission on HIV prevention and education and stuff. So amongst the community themselves, it's already had knowledge, that this is something we need to look out for compared to individuals who identify as heterosexual. This is not for them, because again, the stereotype still exists that they believe it is a gay man's disease, and it only happens to drug users, or it only happens to sex trade workers, when in reality, it can happen to any one of us, and stuff. So that's why it's very, very important to receive this type of information and make the best decision for yourself. Because we can encourage you to get tested until we're blue in the face, but if it's not something that applies to you, or you don't feel that it does, ask us questions, and that way we can be able to help you out to find the best health option for you.
So I'm going to quickly shift gears here, and this will be our final kind of question, but for Eddie, you're working not necessarily from a city perspective, city health department perspective, but you're working for a nonprofit. And a lot of the services that are provided in PILAR related to mental health, but also related to supporting LGBT community. We noticed that in Laredo, and today being National Coming Out Day, and our focus being on Latino sexual health, but also with an emphasis around HIV/AIDS epidemic and just prevention, we noticed that there's not a lot of, or at least I've noticed, having come from larger cities like New York and Washington, having lived in those two areas, not a lot of resources for the LGBT community around education, right? Around education, sexual health education, right? So, and even here at TAMU, we're one of, and by now the state of Texas has now mandated that college campuses can no longer have an LGBT resource center, which is historically served as on other college campuses a way for LGBT youth who may be learning about their sexuality or coming to terms with their sexuality for the first time, understanding how to have safe and practice safe sex because they're beginning to explore their sexuality for the first time. So what type of role can PILAR and other nonprofits here locally play in helping educate youth around both I guess heterosexual and gay heterosexual sexual health awareness and education?
So, as a proud bisexual myself, I can guarantee you all that when it came down to sexual education, I knew very little in terms of what it meant to have sex with a person assigned female at birth. I knew nothing about the other end of the spectrum either. Nobody teaches you these things because sex itself is already taboo. Imagine having to talk about gay sex. That's impossible for some people. The very idea of two men kissing makes a bond, which is ridiculous. What we're trying to do here with the health department, of PILAR, is to further spread the information as much as we can. What you were asking, Dr. Hudson, is for the distinction between the education between heterosexuals and people of the LGBTQ+ community. In reality, there isn't too much difference. The way that you use certain tools, either it be female condoms, dental dams, regular condoms as well, they have multiple functions, and unfortunately, not a lot of people know that. Who here knows what a dental dam is? Anybody? I got 3 in the whole room. 4. There we go. What a dental dam is it's protection for oral sex that's being performed on a person with a vagina. Right? It's a same, or even anal, you're right. It's like a little tablecloth you set down, and I like to say you set it down right before you're about to have your dick. You don't want to get your table messy, in this case your tongue. It's a bad analogy, I'm working on it.
It's a tough Saturday.
Yeah. This is great. I love it.
And there even is condoms that are exclusively for people with vaginas. Say, and this is for the people assigned female. For any of y'all have probably maybe had a partner in the past, but when you ask them, can you please use a condom? They're like, oh no, it doesn't fit, or some crap like that.
There's no problem.
Well, there's even solutions for that. You can insert a condom into yourself and they can go to town and be fine. Because at the end of the day, you're using that condom for your own protection. You are entitled to that protection regardless of what anybody says.
And those are all tools that both of our agencies have, and we can teach you. A lot of times people think, oh, the only time we can go to PILAR or to the health departments to get tested. No, we're there also as educators. We learn on how to use these tools to whatever your circumstances are. Because how many times have we used a random item to help us fix something at the house? Grab the heel of a shoe to nail. The same thing we can do with a lot of these tools to help you to find what is going to be the best fit for you. Like your favorite designer jeans or pair of pants that feel great, look great. The same thing applies to condoms and dental dams and all these things that we have available. And let's see, you're not into having sex with other people, but you're into toys and things like that. We can teach you how to properly take care of them. Because that's another thing. People go, oh my gosh, I have to watch it. Yeah, you have to watch it. You'll be surprised about the things that we have come across our desk. And and then when we respond back, no, let me help you. They're just kind of like, oh, so it opens up the door to ask more questions. So please know that our spaces are safe spaces to ask questions. Because again, everybody's sexual activity is very, very different. And our experiences are very, very different. And sometimes we have questions about those experiences that we're like, okay, was that the right way or was that the wrong way? And in reality, with sex, there really isn't a wrong way. It's just up to you to decide what is that definition and allow us the opportunity to be able to help you. And like I said, if you can start having these conversations, it makes it easier for you to be able to ask those questions. And a lot of times for you to be able to send your friends over, because who's the first person that they call? Guess what happened? It's happened to me, even in my 40s. I still get girlfriends that call me and say, I have a job, and stuff like that. So that way, if it's not for you, hey, take that information and send them our way. Because a lot of times the first person they touch bases, either their teachers, professors, or you, and you know where to send them. Because that's another thing too. People don't know that we exist. And we've been social media advertising and billboards and shelters advertising our services and stuff. And you'd be surprised that we still come across people that say, oh, I didn't know you guys had the service. I thought the health department was just for vaccines and birth certificates, or PILAR is just for mental health. No, we have a whole range of services available to you, and we are here for you. That's the only reason why we exist. It's because we know the need is great in the community. You know, and it's just as important as your physical health, your mental health, your sexual health. You know, and like I said, if you continue having these conversations, they definitely break barriers within the Latinx community. Because you'll be surprised how many things are out there available to you if you just kind of open that door and see where we can go. Hopefully next time I can bring our friend Peter Bornal. He talks about fetishes and all these other things and how to take care of yourself, you know, because those are also another component that comes with sex. You know, sex, like I said again, is a huge spectrum of many things. And yes, as innocent as I might look as a mom, that a couple of things on how to take care of yourself. Yeah. Usually getting could definitely help out as well. But yes, please reach out to us. We're available with any questions or anything like that.
And I think that, thank you, Erica, again. And I think both Eddie and Erica are providing kind of a little insight into the services that their offices provide. This is just kind of reaching the surface level of conversation related to Latino sexual health as a component today, part of Hispanic Heritage Month, as well as LGBT Heritage Month and National Coming Out Day. We thought this would be the most idealistic time to have a conversation that probably doesn't happen that often. But we know that 18 to 24-year-olds, and probably even younger than that, but that's my age group, except for here on campus, I know that we have a lot of 15 to 18-year-olds because we have early college high school students here, and they do engage in a lot of sexual activity. We've had to close down offices and or facilities and resources available because these high school students that are here on a college campus tend to engage in these activities. But anyway, part of this is the conversation of just starting it up for today. But briefly, if we could say 2 services that are unique to your area, or not just unique, but 2 resources that your service could provide from there, because we're running short on our time here. This has been a great conversation as we move through. We'll start off with Eddie for this one.
So for PILAR, besides just the sexual health clinic, we also do offer mental health service. Now, if I can go on about that for a little bit, that's another point of contention for the Latino community. Much like Erica was describing earlier, ponte las pilas, ya no te estés jodiendo. We've all heard it before. You know, we have those days where just getting out of bed, not gonna happen. I've had those days. I've been looking out the window, it's pouring rain, and I'm just like, wow, this sucks. For no reason. So this is my point of advice for everyone in the room. Treat your mental health as importantly as you do your physical health. Because at the end of the day, you're a meat suit being piloted by a bunch of neurons firing off in your head. You want to make sure those neurons are at tip-top shape. Another thing we do at PILAR, we assist those who require, or we have substance abuse counseling. Unfortunately, that's another big problem we do have here in Laredo. There are issues with people who are suffering from addiction to substance abuse. The big one right now, fentanyl. I'm sure you've all heard of that before. Do y'all know how much fentanyl it takes to kill you? 1 round. Fit on the tip of my pinky. That's enough. And a lot of people aren't aware of that information. And some of the people who unfortunately have already fallen victim to this addiction, there's no recourse for them. Because they aren't aware of the resources that are available to them. And frankly, as a society, we failed them. Because they can't help but think that there is no way out, that nobody wants to help them. That's just not true. We're here to help. City of Laredo Health Department, PILAR. My goodness, there's a whole plethora of places where you can go to get certain services. And we're hoping that with us coming out and doing this talk for you guys, that those organizations get the wind in their sails and they come out and do it too. Because there's a lot of people out there. And us two, our organization, can only do so much. But we're thankful that there are people working in the medical field, working in the mental health field, going out of their way to offer assistance to people. That's amazing. And I hope you all catch word of those organizations as well when they start coming out. Thank you.
As part of the health department, we have different services available. If you don't have a primary care service, we have a physician available. Immunizations, as everybody knows, your birth certificate. But another thing that we offer under our LETS program is the testing process. And in case if a person is diagnosed with an infection, we can help with medications and treatment itself. We have our pharmacy in-house. We also have a lab in-house. So you wouldn't have to go across town to be able to get those services as well. Yes.
Would you need insurance for that?
No, you do not need insurance for most of our services, and there's different programs that can be able to assist in waive those fees if necessary. So it just depends on what type of service you're trying to see. We can definitely help. Another thing too, we also provide medical services for people living with HIV, because a lot of times people don't know where to go. So our program provides them with that. And with that also includes mental health counseling, also dental, and also housing assistance for individuals who are living with AIDS. So we have a whole array of services at the health department that is available to you, and it's your health department. You know, it's not just, like I said, for birth certificates and vaccine, we have a whole array of services available to you. And going back with the whole fentanyl, we now have a detox center. And I know our counselors are working in conjunction with PILAR counselors to be able to make sure that people come in and also receive that service. I will have some flyers and my business card provided for you all. So in case if you guys would like to take one and stuff, and you have further questions after this, because I know it's a short period of time and people have classes to go to and stuff, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to any of PILAR. We'd be more than happy to answer even more of those embarrassing questions that people might feel sometimes. But like I tell people, the dumb question is the question that didn't get asked. So please feel free to reach out to us. And if we don't have an answer for you, we'll definitely find it for you.
So I greatly appreciate it. And I think another service that both of you have mentioned already is testing. It is very important for your age of students, especially if you have multiple sexual partners, even if you just have one sexual partner, is to engage in testing and frequent testing. So
and we offer it both here. Yesterday we were here, and this team is here today. So check with the Student Health and Wellness Center.
Actually, I do apologize to everybody. My partner who came to do the testing over in the Student Health Center had to leave early. So unfortunately, we won't be having testing here with y'all, but I do have our business card right here. And I'm gonna hand one to everybody, so that secondhand embarrassment of, oh, well, what if I go? Then they'll know. Well, not everyone here has a card, so everyone shares the embarrassment.
No, but we do come here to the Student Wellness Center. So in case if you don't feel comfortable going to PILAR or to the health department, check on your social media feeds. They're always posting information of our program. Like I said, yesterday, one of our teammates was here, and I know today PILAR was here as well.
they were here, so they were here, just not, yes, they were here.
So.
That's good.
Like I
We're
said,
just an extra added bonus.
yeah, so we do come here to the Student Center to provide the services as well. So in case you don't come to the health department, please know that we come here at least once a month.
Great. So there's also the ability for you all to, again, as I said, to get tested as part of just your normal wellness checks. You should be visiting your doctor, your PCP, primary care physician, annually for annual checkups. Probably should at that same time if you are.
Include a sexual health check, mental health check.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you all. Today, again, this was part of the mental health, not mental health, oh my God, sexual health conversation, but also part of our celebration of National Coming Out Day, as well as Latino Heritage Month. The food today were pupusas from El Salvador, and then arroz con pollo from Puerto Rico as a celebration of Blancocho from Puerto Rico as well. Thank you all.
You guys are welcome to come and get a bag.
Thank you.